up, how way, ay, 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 ay. How way up, ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. How way, ay, 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 ay. How way, ay, 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 ay.
Hi everyone, welcome to The Bridge. I'm your host, Kira Young, and you've reached me on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. As usual, we are simulcasting with Real Liberty Media, and today again with People's Internet Radio, so welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. It's 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the 4th of March 2017, and tonight we have two special guests. In the first hour, we're welcoming back Uŋpa Nuŋpa to basically tell you about the new chapter of the movement, which is Standing Rock is Everywhere, and also to break down the ending and the takedown of the camps and how exactly that happened and how things could have been different. So that will be the first hour. And then in the second hour, we'll be talking to Philip, and he is a Bay Area poet and performer, and you can check out his stuff on SoundCloud under the name Joaquin Thunderbird. So, Steve, see if we can get Uŋpa.
Yeah, I'm here.
Wow, welcome to The Bridge, Uŋpa Nuŋpa. Wow, this is incredible. This is weird. Okay, yeah, and I think it really is the government's fault. No. Who knows? So, okay, welcome back. It's been a while.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been a little while. I appreciate it as always. Always an honor and privilege. I'd like to say hello to everybody, and thank you, Kira, for the invite.
Absolutely. We're on to the next phase of the movement, but people are still trying to understand what happened and how things broke down the way they did. And without ever having any sort of experience, a lot of people who joined up with the movement really never saw how the alphabet soup works in destroying everything in Indian country. So I thought maybe we could break it down a little bit for people.
Well, no indigenous pain, no financial gain. The camps were closed. We saw Chetishikoling get closed. That was understandable. Chetishikoling was on so-called Corps of Engineer land. We knew that the day would be coming when they would evict us. Heroic, if futile, stand was made. Dozens more were arrested in the final days of the main camp. And just this past week, we saw LaDonna Brave Bull barred from her own property at Sacred Stone. But previous to that, we learned the real situation legally where the camp was located there on the Standing Rock Reservation. We learned that LaDonna had a 6% ownership in what is known as the Lean Warrior allotment, where Sacred Stone was located, and having only a 6% interest, tribal law requires that 80% of owners on an allotment agree to a camp such as Sacred Stone being permitted. And we also learned that the Standing Rock Sioux tribe itself had a 2/3 ownership in that allotment. So that when the tribal council and tribal chairman ended up, requesting that all camps leave the reservation, the eviction was inevitable after that.
I don't think that's really how it was presented by LaDonna, though.
Well, I can tell you that the narrative I heard, going back to when the camp was first established in April of last year, was that, we were defending LaDonna's ancestral family land. Mm-hmm. And going up there, that was still what I believed and thought until getting to camp, the Chetishikoling camp, after it was established in later part of August of last year, and being told these things. It wasn't until September that I heard, the story that even part of Sacred Stone was located on Corps of Engineer lease, just like Chetishikoling was. Mm-hmm. And that was all news to me, and it was kind of disillusioning at first, but then it was just, to move on from it. Because Chetishikoling had displaced sacred stone to a certain extent by then, and a movement was born. There was talk of a movement for, a year or two leading up to that, but finally we had the stage to present it to the rest of the world, what we were about, and what we want to see accomplished through this movement.
Yeah, everybody just put that aside because there was bigger work to be done. And I don't think people really understand how Indian land trust law plays into this, this fiasco, really.
Indians with trust land don't understand how Indian trust law plays into it.
Yeah, and that's
so complicated.
Yeah, and yeah, so it's by design, really. I mean, it's that complicated by design, and it's destructive by design. So you were saying earlier about how there had to be a certain percentage of 80%, I think, of the trust.
80% of the ownership. And that just goes to show how divisive it is.
Mm-hmm.
For LaDonna to have the share that she has, I think it's 1/15. And they it's called fractionated land on the reservations, where you have multiple heirs to these, that would end up being just tiny parcels of land. And, so for the Standing Rock Sioux tribe to accumulate 2/3 of that allotment, that means that relatives of LaDonna's were selling their shares back to the tribe. And that is, it does get really complicated here, as you know, and as you stated.
Yeah, and it may have been during the whole Coble, settlement, because that was one of the things that was offered during that settlement, was you could actually, tribes were pushing at that time during the Coble settlement to buy back the land. And when people were getting their settlements, it was like $1,000. They were like, what do I need this land for? I can't do anything with it anyway. And that again is by design. And so when people have these shares, the reason they're so fractionated is because it all goes back to when the reservations were created. Each person got an allotment, and then as they had heirs, that allotment got fractionated each generation of people. And then, so of course the government comes in and their policies, in the way that they infantilize natives, will take care of this for you. It's a little too much for you to deal with. And for up until extremely recently, people were not even allowed to know who those other, heirs or holders of that land trust was. So the only way that you could get 80% people to agree was to somehow get around that, or for the government to take care of it and say, we're just going to lease it to, quite frequently non-native, corporations and, companies, non-native owned, because they go through the Department of Interior and do it that way. They don't have to go to, however many people have a piece of that land. They don't have to go to all those people. They just go through the government, and they seem to be favored. It seems to be that these companies are favored over the actual people who have land in trust. So
Indeed.
People who have no interest whatsoever in making sure that land is properly cared for are the ones who actually have the advantage in being able to use that to prosper.
That's correct. Yeah, no, I agree with that totally.
Yeah.
But it's also a good lesson for protectors and defenders going forward from now, to know what you're getting into before you get there, and do investigations. The other camps that are currently actively resisting across the country, I know people have looked into them now as a result of the experience with Sacred Stone, and finding out who owns what, where the land is located, which jurisdictions they fall under. It is a very good lesson learned. I know for me personally.
Yeah. And a good lesson in, I heard versus what the actual truth is. And, who knows? LaDonna may not even have known that she had such a small interest and just had this vision and was driven to do it. And it happened. And then when push came to shove, oh goodness, I don't actually.
Yeah, it would be good to give her the benefit of the doubt in that regard.
Yeah.
I do not know LaDonna personally except as acquaintances. I still feel badly about all of this.
Sure.
For her personally, what she has gone through, what she has had to endure.
Right.
And but I feel a lot of it at this point has been self-invited.
Mm-hmm.
We are talking about a camp that did see close to $4 million in donations made to it. I know that I've been told, I heard, going back to what you just said, that the accounts are frozen. She doesn't have access to them, but people are, demanding of her to pay for this removal of whoever, or pay for bus rides home for people and clean up. And so I really don't know where everything's at.
Mm-hmm.
I just know that, hindsight is indeed 20/20. In hindsight, things could have been handled very much differently in regards to the money that became involved, the amounts that became involved, amounts that I know that did not see it down to the protectors and defenders, the grassroots who were in the camps. It was all very troubling to learn all of this after the fact, and as more continues to come to light, including that there are still warehouses with donated items for the camps just sitting there, not sorted through, not gone through. It's just there are a lot of questions raised now that the camps are closed, and we need to go about answering them in a good way, and I know that it's going to happen. Some very good people want full accountability. I fully support transparency. I think going forward, the movement has to be as transparent as possible and as honest and open with its membership as possible. Mm-hmm. And, again, learning from the lessons of Ochete Shikoi and Satan Stone.
Right. Yeah, and the other thing I don't think that people understand is how, there's one question about has Morton County been allowed to go on reservation land?
Those are the reports that I've had confirmed by people whom I trust here, that yes, North Dakota Highway Patrol and Morton County Sheriff are on Northern Standing Rock. In fact, North Dakota Highway Patrol is performing traffic stops, pullovers on the reservation. Very troubling, to say the least.
Yeah, because that would mean they would have to have been given permission by the tribe to do that. Exactly. Right.
And for all of these other agencies to be present, we're talking, I heard at last count, 17 different federal agencies, National Park Service, Custom Borders and Enforcement, 17 of them were performing some type of function in the closure and eviction of protectors. That has to have taken the full cooperation and collaboration of the tribal government and its resources.
And that's overkill. I mean, that's serious overkill for a camp that not a single weapon was found. Not a single one.
Exactly.
And every single claim made by law enforcement has never been substantiated. Every single one. Yet they still seem to have the right to continue with that, with that as being the assumption, that they're armed, they're dangerous.
Well, they're going unchallenged by their own media.
Right.
I mean, when they get up there and give a press conference, when the Morton County Sheriff or someone from the governor's office gets up there and makes outrageous claims or made outrageous claims against the camp, they weren't challenged on it. Mm-hmm. And it was reported as fact, that very night on the 6 o'clock news.
Right. So, again, we're in a situation where we have to rely on our own sources of media. And, what I say for those who have blown me off on this show is that you didn't only blow me off, but you blew off the listeners who really wanted to know the truth and wanted to know your story. But there seems to be this thing that people think that the only form that's going to validate their story is going to be the mainstream media. Well, I hate to break it to you, the mainstream media will always edit whatever you say to fit their narrative. Always. It's
always.
Never. Yeah.
When they're not flat out ignoring you. I mean,
right.
Look at the force used to complete the eviction of Ochete Shikoi. Those of us who are paying attention on social media saw the dozens of militarized or armored vehicles that entered the camp. Hundreds of men armed with live ammunition entered the camp. None of that got reported on any of the major networks. None of it.
Yep.
I mean, it is clearly a warning to people that, they can do what they want to do and they can get away with it. Kira, I've often heard claims here that the world is watching, and I really don't think the world is watching.
Right.
Parts of the world or people around the world are watching, but where are the people rising up in our defense? Where are other governments around the world rising up in our defense of what has occurred here?
Right.
We're not seeing it. We're not seeing it.
We're not. And for those who think that it can't happen to you, I hate to break to you, but the military's already been used against us and will continue to be used against us. And if you think that live feeds are only going to be interrupted at Standing Rock, I hate to break it to you, but a lot of live feeds were interrupted in Washington, D.C. during the J20. Every single feed except for, the major news networks was interrupted. Right. So they can do it anywhere. And it's part of their arsenal. Part of their arsenal is just to ride up in a tank, declare whatever you're doing, whether it be praying or non-violently resisting, whatever you're doing is a riot. And they only need to call it a riot. It doesn't actually have to be a riot. They just need to label it that. And again, that will go unquestioned as well.
Well, that's going to be a challenge for the movement going forward here, is the response from the establishment, the government, to what we were able to accomplish in North Dakota over the past 6 months. The Washington Post reported last month or a week or so ago, I can't remember for sure, but at least 18 states have proposed legislation that targets protest tactics or sought to increase existing penalties for so-called illegal protests. I mean, 18 different states, they're responding to it in that way. And in Arizona, as I'm sure many might be aware, just last week, a bill was defeated that would have allowed the state to seize assets as suspected organizers of protests. Their state Senate did pass that bill, but the House let the measure die. We already know out of North Dakota, there were several bills introduced into the legislative selection that the famous one being the legalization of vehicular manslaughter in North Dakota. That did go down to defeat, but narrowly so.
Yeah.
But they did manage to criminalize wearing a mask at a protest. Mm-hmm. This is what we're up against going forward. In fact, in your home state of Virginia, I was doing some research earlier before I came on the program here with you. Your home state of Virginia had 4 different anti-protest bills, all of which went down to defeat in committee in January. But even in Virginia, we're seeing it.
Right. Well, see, the reason we're seeing it is because Virginia is now on the table for fracking and pipelines and everything, because they're running out of space. So now Virginia, like my friend Maya said, is like the Virgin, and they're ready to pounce because normally Virginia's been off the table because it's heavily populated. And so they've been, fracking less populated areas. But now Virginia's on the table because, of course, there's no end to the amount of money that they want to make off of destroying all life. And it's legal. So, that's why they're preemptive.
Their industry is up against it. A mutual friend of ours shared with me an article from the 1st of March in Forbes. And the title of the article is The Beginning of the End for the Bakken Shale Play. Mm-hmm. And it openly demonstrates, or clearly demonstrates, that the reserves are depleting. Oil production is significantly and irreversibly decreasing in the oil formation up there, which makes me ask why the absolute need for a pipeline like Dakota Access at its location. They know they're depleting the reserves. They know the damage and upset that this pipeline has occurred, yet they continue to press ahead with it. And maybe what they want here is just to, or maybe they have plans, just poison all our freshwater sources. Then we got to buy it from them.
Right, right. There's that, and then there's also, it doesn't make business sense to do, much less ecological sense to do, but because their industry is so heavily subsidized, i.e. corporate welfare, they're able to do it. But it doesn't actually, It's not actually, it takes a lot more energy to actually extract that than the energy you actually get from it when you look at the cost in terms of ecological disaster and what it costs to actually extract that fracked oil. And here's the other thing. Yesterday, the Pawnee Nation, Oklahoma, sued the fracking company in tribal court. They brought a case against them for the damage done by the recent earthquake, which is caused by fracking. And so this hopefully will set a precedent, not only to be able to sue in tribal court, but to be able to hold the fracking industry responsible for these man-made earthquakes that they're causing in Oklahoma. So I hope they win. Good for them.
Yes, very good for them. And Oklahoma is a future battleground here. It should have been already. Mm-hmm. Thank God for the Standing Rock and DAPL occurring, because hopefully now we get the spotlight on these other places. And I know you've done a good job of that, Kira, trying to encourage people to get to where these other camps are still fighting black snakes. The Two Rivers camp in West Texas, I know you had Alan Vincent on a week ago, and a very good show, and she knows what she's talking about. She was there, and we need people to get to these battlegrounds. Oklahoma, West Texas. I just saw the camp that's established in Pennsylvania to fight that Lancaster pipeline, that gas pipeline. Mm-hmm. We need people turning out at these places, because we are up against a situation where they are. We were talking about the states earlier, where they were trying to pass or toughen existing laws, or passing laws or toughen existing ones. And we're facing it in these states. The new camp that went up in Iowa, that LaDonna traveled to earlier this week, they established a new tribal camp in Iowa to fight the southern portion of the Dakota Access Pipeline. They proposed a bill making it blocking traffic punishable by up to 5 years in prison. So, wow. Where these battlegrounds are we need warriors. We need the seasoned warriors from Ochete Shikoni, from Sacred Stone, to go to these other places and help these camps.
Right. And we can't get trapped in Ochete Shikoni is not only a place but a time, in terms of Standing Rock. It had its arch, its arch of success. And when you first came on with your daughter Tashina and talked about that first fence jump action in August, that was when it kicked off and when things really, really got going. And the best part of the movement was at that time and shortly after. And then things started to, the arch was reached, and then things started to, and that's how it's always going to go for every camp and every action. There's going to be a time and a place, and if you miss it, there'll be another one. So people want to go back to that time, not just the place. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I know. I understand that completely. Yeah. I found I have had a hard time adjusting
right.
to life outside of camp, and it's difficult for me to really get into conversations with people who either were at camp or actively supported it from home, a keyboard warrior. Those are the other people I really feel like talking to. I've been in an urban area now for going on 4 weeks, if not 4 weeks today. And it's just, you see all the people in these large groups of people coming from where I come from, the reservation in South Dakota, and they don't know about what we've done. They don't know about the sacrifices made. They might have heard about some pipeline protests going on, but even that is good luck with that. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard after experiencing that time at Ochete Shikoni and the time that I put in, about 4 months, I just can't wait to get back to that, Kira. I'm anxious for it, because I know that the opportunities are out there, and we'll create more opportunities as we begin to build a movement, as we begin to gather resources, and as we begin to fight not just the ones that we already know about, but the ones that are proposed or the ones that are already in existence.
Mm-hmm. And we'll keep perfecting the system and the ways to get around their preemptive strikes to try to avoid our constitutional and human rights. We will keep insisting that we were born with them.
No, I found it as I was doing research, like I said, for the program. I came across a very good quote that was used in the Virginia debates, and it's from John F. Kennedy. And it's relevant to the situation today. And I've seen it on Facebook. But those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. And if this movement going forward needs to remember those words and bear them in mind, and those who seek to oppose this movement and what we stand for need to remember those words as well. You know, I was watching live feed earlier today, Kira. I know you tuned in for at least a portion of it, of the march and rally that took place in New York City. There's much talk about March 10th planned march and rally in Washington, D.C., the Rise with Standing Rock Native Nations March. Buses from, I know at least a half dozen buses are departing from various parts across the country to take people to that event. They're going to be setting up a teepee camp on the lawn up there. I don't think they're allowing overnight sleeping in them, but the teepees will be there from the 7th to the 10th. And thousands are expected to attend, so I'm hoping that is a real opportunity for the movement to grow and gain more awareness if we can turn out those type of numbers.
Yeah, you know, I think something that's going to get in the way is this animosity now towards Chairman Archambault and the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe Council, and whatever actions, you know, had to be taken that I think water protectors are feeling betrayed. And so I myself am a little bit concerned about if that's going to have an effect on the you know, on the DC events and moving forward.
Well, I'll tell you, Kira, I have no interest whatsoever in going to Washington, D.C. and marching.
Yeah.
And I have no interest in going underneath the banner of some of the ones who I know will be speaking at the rally or whatever they do plan on having out there. I fully support everyone who is going.
Yeah.
And I would encourage everyone who can go to go, who want to learn more. But I know where I'm at and I know what I need to do. And I have no need to be traveling to Washington, D.C. There's other work that needs to be done in the area that I'm at right now. There is actually going to be a support march in support of what's happening in D.C., and I will be a part of that. Mm-hmm. So if you can't make it to D.C., you know, your listeners hopefully will find ways to act locally. And there's always ways to act locally in this movement, Kira.
Oh, yeah. Always, always. Yeah. And again, it only takes 2 people, from what I hear, to shut down a bank. So
every time I drive by a Wells Fargo, that's all that's on my mind. All we need is 2 people, and we'll shut them down.
It's not so hard. It pisses people off, but you got to make people uncomfortable every now and then to move things forward.
Well, I think we need to be up in people's grills on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And that is what I'm hoping for as the weather warms across the northern part of the country here, that we will see more activism on a daily basis. We do have thousands who were awakened. We do have thousands who went to Oceti-Sakowin. We have thousands who followed passionately, devotedly online, who spread awareness and watched the live streams and know exactly what happened to our people up there. Mm-hmm. We have all of that going in our favor, and it's time for us to capitalize on it. You know, myself and Lindsay Norton started the Facebook page Standing Rock is Everywhere. And it's just getting going, and we're planning to build it in a way by adding original content as I'm able to travel to other places, other camps across the country. But in the words that Lindsay wrote for the page, Standing Rock is Everywhere is for frontline and online warriors to connect and protect. We aim to unite all protectors in camps so that we know what is happening and where. And we need people to begin to network like this, Kira. And it's already started in a good way. You know, there are several Facebook groups out there that I'm a part of, that I know you're a part of, where we're seeing the sharing of information and then getting supplies and resources, people to the places where it's needed.
Yes, and that's another thing I want to get back to is that, you know, when we were watching Oceti-Sakowin get totally taken down, was seeing all those supplies and just like being destroyed, all those structures, and knowing that, I mean, I'd seen live feeds just earlier of massive supplies in there and just being like, wow, That's horrible. There has to be a better way to organize that and make sure that doesn't happen, that kind of waste.
Well, again, with hindsight being 2020, all
Yep.
we had to go back to was September 9th with the activation of the North Dakota National Guard by then Governor Dalrymple.
Mm-hmm.
There should have been no clearer indication of how far they were willing to go than the activation of that guard.
Right.
Back then in September, early September, people who ended up staying in Ochete for the duration predicted that the guard would be brought in and used to whatever means necessary to end the camp. And that's exactly what we saw take place. And not only end the camp, but to ensure completion of the pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Right. And now that oil executives are being appointed to, cabinet positions, and the Secretary of State is Rex Tillerson, who is a Exxon oil man, there's really no front on it at all.
No.
Yeah, the oil companies, America's army is their army, and anybody who can't see that really isn't looking, really isn't trying to look at anything.
Well, that's why I was, once we realized what we were up against in terms of the, union between government and corporation, and the fact that military was deployed in September, planning should have begun then for a more orderly evacuation of the camps. Mm-hmm. And not necessarily an evacuation, but just a breakdown of the camps.
Yeah.
We instead of sacrificing so much for North Dakota, we perhaps could have husbanded and squirreled away some of those resources, mm-hmm. and began thinking long term and realizing KXL is coming into Lakota Treaty territories. We need to fight that. We couldn't have depleted all of our resources fighting DAPL when we have other battles to fight, especially when it was made clear that they were going to complete DAPL no matter what. Mm-hmm. The election of Donald Trump on, was it November 8th or whenever it was, mm-hmm. ensured it as well. Those who were in the know or had been paying attention should have realized then that the end was not far, especially after his inauguration day in January. Mm-hmm. Planning could have begun then, instead of digging in and entrenching in a lost cause, that we move on and find other battlegrounds and start winning battles again. Because at the end of October, they started kicking our asses pretty good, mm-hmm. and then just got worse from there. And we should have, in retrospect, be aware of that in the future. That, one thing as Lakota I know is our ancestors didn't fight losing battles. Mm-hmm. And we preserved as much of the people, we preserved as much of our resources as possible. And those are lessons that we could also learn from the closure of these camps, Ochete, Shikomi, and Sacred Stone, in the future, is not to cling to a losing proposition for too long.
Yeah. Yeah. Not giving up is
it's far from giving up. It's living the fight another day in a stronger way.
Exactly.
And with lessons learned.
Right.
I mean, they could call it surrender. I call it intelligence. There is no reason to give up everything. Look at 800 people now are facing criminal charges in North Dakota. I guess that number's coming down as more cases get dismissed by right-thinking judges up that way. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But we've already sacrificed a tremendous amount in North Dakota. And as the live videos show, all of the resources that either went up in flames or got hauled out in the back of dumpsters. We're talking not tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of dollars mm-hmm. that we could have put towards the KXL fight, which will have multiple locations along its route for our people to wage meaningful resistance.
Yeah, and I think that people got stuck into the one thing, like this is, and we're really invested, like we're gonna win, but yeah. Like you said.
Well, and then the other thing is for our own people to be honest going forward. I mean, we did see the dishonesty emerge in terms of at Ochete and Sacred Stone of not being fully aware of the land situations up there, where the leases were, what exactly they said. Rumors controlled every day and every night. We need to be more honest as a movement. And I read an interesting article back in January, Native Sun News Today, James Gallego Davies. And he wrote about finding no reference to a black snake prophecy before the KXL fight in 2014. So I did my own digging and research, and Kiri's absolutely right. Yet we sold this black snake prophecy as, this ancestral warning that was given to us, and it's not true. We need to be honest about our message. We need to be honest about our motives. We need to be honest with our people. Going forward, learning the lessons from Ochete, learning the lessons from Sacred Stone.
Yeah, and I think the thing that gets in the way is that people confuse truth telling with and honesty, with being hypercritical or trying to tear somebody down.
I've been accused of being a colonized Indian, of acting colonial for launching criticisms at some of the people and things that have occurred.
I think it's actually more of a traditional mode of being to when it's time to be critical, of a leader. How else is that leader going to lead well unless they are, do have honest people around them? But again, all of us have confused leadership and pathology for far too long. We're all guilty of that. So, but there's this protective mode in Indian country that, with our native leaders, because, we're always disappointed. How many times have we seen everybody jumped on the Dapple Dave thing saying like, I know he took money. There was no proof of it, right? But everybody jumped on it because, I knew it. This happens every time. That might not be exactly how things went down, though, so but we should know exactly what went down. How did this happen where these other players on the council, gave the go-ahead for all this alphabet soup to come in and take out these camps on the reservation.
Right, and what were their motivations for allowing that?
Right.
Yes, that's why I say transparency has to be paramount. Truth and honesty have to be paramount. In the days of our ancestors, leaders, one lie destroyed a leader. One lie. We have good young leadership emerging. I particularly, at Ochete Shikoni, was impressed with a man who you interviewed up there by the name of Louis Grassfield. We have, honest, dedicated leaders like him emerging out of this movement. And
welcome everyone to this week's
going forward, I would hope people would be very critical if they see something on social media, when they hear people make statements, to really analyze them and think about them. And we will see a stronger movement as a result of it.
Yeah, I think we will. And the other thing is that, non-natives, when they see a native leader, they automatically assume that, the things that native leader stands for is like everybody in Indian country just stands behind that. And everybody is all about that, and so then other natives are like, no, that's not exactly what, I'm not behind that. I support him on this, but I'm not behind that. And it confuses them. They think like, okay, like if there's a native leader, like all natives are going to be like pro this person. It's,
well, there are several good examples of that. And,
right.
And it's true too. The social media creates this false perception on the part of people who aren't directly connected to Indian country, who are just learning about it through social media. The vast majority of people on Cheyenne River weren't actively fighting Dapple. They weren't fighting the black snake. They were just going about their lives. And maybe tacit support and basic awareness of the situation. But we're not a bunch of saints out here, going to sweats every day and in constant prayer. We're not.
Right.
That's not the reality of where our people are. In fact, the reality is much more different and much more stark than that.
Mm-hmm.
And then that is part of the need for the movement, is addressing the reality of how our people really are, how most of us live our days, live our lives day to day on reservations within the communities, where we do have all of the social ills, where we do have the historical trauma at play constantly. And part of Ochete Shikoni, Sacred Stone, should be about healing that in our people, as we've talked about often, Kira, on previous shows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that definitely played out in the end, too, those old traumas and those old wounds and those old social ills. But I feel also we took a step forward. We took a real step forward because we committed ourselves to nonviolence. And, you know, I think that for me, that's a step forward. I think that's where things went awry, before, because when you, I mean, and I'm not opposed to it, to becoming not committed to that in the future, because of what we're faced with. You said before that the deal has been sealed as far as oil companies and the government now being one. That's the very definition of fascism, is corporations and government are one entity. And that's what we're living under, so, we have to come up with the tactics and techniques that work for what we're under. And, that commitment to nonviolence really, was impressive to non-natives to see, and something that was surprising.
It made for some powerful imagery.
Yeah.
How could you watch, the images that have emerged out of Standing Rock, out of North Dakota over the past several months, and not be moved one way or the other?
Right.
It's just, these are images that demand a response on an at least emotional level, if not a intellectual level as well, to begin thinking about why is this happening, and dig deeper into it.
Yep. And see what you can do. Yeah.
And then that's just it here. It is up to each of us now to do what we can, and whatever capacity that might be. If you want to see meaningful change in the world, now is the time to rise. If you've got to stand up, you've got to do whatever abilities you have to the best of them to help the movement out. Now is when you need it, because so many are dispirited after what happened. We need to elevate again, and we are. It's a daily process. I know you're involved in it daily. I'm involved in it daily, and I'm proud that so many family and friends of mine are. We need to rely on each other each day going forward, and be there for each other.
How do you suggest that people check out these camps before they go to them?
Well, there is Standing Rock is everywhere, our Facebook page, and you can post a question or a comment. Other than that, the camps each generally have their own Facebook page going, if not website. Two Rivers in West Texas, the Lancaster camp in Pennsylvania, Sable down in Florida. Just if people go to those, just do a search for them, they will come up. And then just ask questions, find out who's running the Facebook page, find out who is administering the website. Talk to them. Don't be afraid to ask, because you might be sacrificing, your freedom. You might be risking personal injury by going to these places. So you better know what you're doing before you get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Find out, there's going to be a difference between these, these camps that are run in an intertribal way as opposed to the camps up in North Dakota were very Lakota-centric, at least in the beginning.
Right.
So there's going to be differences there. And just to be aware that in intertribal situations, there's, natives do things differently, different tribes, even different families.
There are protocols.
Yeah.
There are protocols you need to be aware of.
Right. And so, when in that area, you go by the protocols of those people of that area. So, thanks so much, Uŋpa Nuŋpa. I really enjoyed having you back.
Thank you, Kira. Appreciate it.
Stick around. Hi, everyone.